On today's program, we're going to see how the Holocaust could not stop the Jewish people and the plan that God has for the land of Israel.
I will console those who mourn in Zion, to give them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they may be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of Adonai, that he may be glorified.
Shalom Chaverim, welcome friends to our program. I'm Miles Weiss.
And I'm Catherine Weiss, and welcome to our series, Beauty for Ashes. We are doing a series reminding us of the horror of the Holocaust at the same time of God's promise for the modern state of Israel. It is a miracle that God has brought forth the people. You know, it says in Jeremiah 16 that he will no longer just be known as the God who brought the children of Israel out of the Red Sea or delivered them from the Pharaoh of that time, but he will be known as the God who brought the children of Israel from where he'd scattered them from the north, and it says all the lands, to bring them back to the land that he has promised, which is Israel, and he promised it, it says, to his father. So it's not just, it's a misnomer that it's Palestine, the Palestinians' land. It's the Jewish homeland, and it was the Romans that named it Palestine
as an
insult. So that is what we want to just remind ourselves, that it is God's promised land.
Yes, it's a both and. There's an ancient promise and there's a modern fulfillment that took place after the World War. The setup was the devastation in Germany between World War I and World War II. This is the modern setup. In terms of politics, that the church was weak in Germany and the economy was devastated. That made the vacuum for Hitler to come in with a message of nationalism that led to demonizing and delegitimizing a specific group of people to make the ascendancy of the Germans seem more appropriate and more possible. Now, one of the most iconic images in all of the Holocaust filmography and photographs is that of the train tracks leading up to Auschwitz II, Birkenau. And that is where we went to teach about this killing field that was designed specifically for the murder and the extermination and the disposal of Jewish victims. So let's go now to Birkenau. We're here at the infamous tracks into Birkenau, one of the most well-known, well-documented of the horrors of these camps. This is where thousands of Jews were brought to their death.
This is where the massive amounts of Jews were coming from all the different nations, from Hungary, from Czech, they were just pulling them out and bringing them here to work or for extermination. And then, the ultimate is to wipe out the Jews. You're either a person of the book that lays down your life, or you're indifferent. And that's the challenge to us today.
Book or bargain? A person of the book or a person of the bargain, which will you be? Will you be one who stands with Israel? Will you be one who stands with the Lord Yeshua? Or will you be one who opposes and comes against what God is intending as he prepares to come back to this earth? I just had a remarkable experience here. I was hovering near a group of Israeli students dressed in Israeli flags and listening to a man teach them, a more, a teacher, teach them in Hebrew so I could learn. And he said something amazing. He was quoting the Talmud. You might recognize it from Schindler's List. He was saying to these students, after he talked about what Hitler did here and how Hitler's plan was to wipe the Jews off the earth forever, he said, remember this, Yeledim, children, remember this. He who saves one soul, it's as if he saved the entire world. And that's our message to you today. We're at Birkenau in the guard tower. Giant camp. There's no way to explain this other than to look to the Hebrew prophets who saw forward because of the anointing of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit. And if you realize that out of this horror, out of this hellhole came the reborn state of Israel, then it makes sense. It's not God's doing. In fact, God, throughout the prophets, chastises the nations for correcting his chosen people and going too far. This is an example of hell coming against the Jewish people. But out of this place, we see the fulfillment of Jeremiah 16, that will bring you out of all the nations. Amos 9, that'll plant you in the land never to be uprooted again. And most especially Ezekiel 37, I will open your graves and bring you into my land. We interviewed 3 Holocaust survivors for this series. Each of them were very young when they were sent to Auschwitz. We thought it was important to learn how they were able to work through their experiences and what was their view of the future.
As a child, I was so focused on living that if you focus on, at the same time, worrying about somebody dying, the little energies that you have will be taken away in your mind by the deaths. And in order to survive, you have to keep all that energy in a positive mind, how to live one more day, how to steal a piece of bread, how to do other things to get food. And you have no room to mourn the dead. You are frozen in place in survival. There was nothing else. The only thing that I am proud about myself, never ever did I steal bread from another inmate or did anything to another inmate. So it is a coping mechanism of a child is very different than a grown-up. The grown-ups know that in that big world there are people who live free. And how do they dare impose that on them? I did not know that there was a free world. I thought that everybody lived like I lived. Therefore, I had no room for anger. I only had room for survival. And that is a difference between a child's perspective and a grown-up's perspective, because there is anger. And therefore, I believe that many grown-ups have a lot more difficulty forgiving because they remember the anger and the way they have been reduced in their own existence.
Normal people. Mm-hmm. The Germans were normal people. 20 years earlier, they fought 120,000 Jews fought for Germany against the Allies, against the Americans and the British and the French. Right. For their Vaterland.
As citizens.
But because it was their Vaterland. Mm-hmm. They were there for 10 and 12 and 15 generations. They were Germans. I want the Jewish people to survive.
Yes.
They've survived 2,000 years in diaspora.
Yes.
They should survive another 2,000 years. Why not? In Israel, but in a Jewish country.
Yes.
Because we cannot survive in no Jewish country.
Yes.
We are losing 200,000-300,000 people every year because of mixed marriages.
Yes.
And it's only normal.
Yes.
I want the Jewish people to exist.
Yes.
Because the Jewish people has done a lot for the world.
That's true.
We have done more to the world than the world will ever do to us. Mm-hmm. And the world hates us? How is this possible?
Today, I don't really care what the perpetrators think. It became more about me, that I had power over my life, power to forgive, that healed me, liberated me, and most important part that I immediately appreciated was the fact that I had power over my life. No one could do something to me without me having power about what happens. That was the discovery that I didn't realize that I had. I did not have any power, nor does any survivor, to change what happened. Oh, the only thing I can change is in the way I react to it. And that is up to me. And by doing so, I removed the burden that the Nazis put over my head.
So you were how old when you came to Israel?
I became to Israel after the Six-Day War. I was 35 years old because my dream was all the time with me. My mother was here, and I was so happy when the State of Israel was established.
Yes.
Because from England at the time of the war,
Yes.
some of the boys did come and fought here and stayed here.
Yes.
But I couldn't go because they had my records and I wasn't fit enough to come to. But I stayed in England, but then got married, had lovely children, 2 children, a daughter and a son. And I said to my wife, let's go. So I left everything. I had a business, I had a house, and we decided we're going to try and live in Israel. And when we arrived in Israel with a beautiful sunshine and a lot of lovely people, they were welcoming us, and this is how we came to Israel. And I'm the happiest person today living in my own country.
And you've fulfilled your dream of building your own home here.
I did build my own home because I always wanted to contribute physically to my country, but unfortunately, a lot was already done. We built a country which is blossoming,
Yes.
and it's not a desert anymore.
That's right.
And that was already done before me, unfortunately. But I still managed to build my own house, and I think that was my contribution.
So Israel is the future for the Jewish people.
Without any doubt. There is no future to the Jewish people
Without
outside Israel, because like I said, the big countries like the United States, this will take 3 or 4 generations or 5 generations.
Yes.
The others like Denmark or Belgium, it will take 2 generations.
Yes.
There is no future for the Jewish nation if it's not Israel.
My granddaughter, Leora, said to me, Grandpa, how can you still believe in God as a Jew after what you went through? Even though I suffered so much, I am proud of the fact that I was born a Jew, and I suffered because of I am a Jew, and I'm not going to change now, and I'll stay a Jew. And I'm very proud of our heritage and what we have done and what we have created.
Yes.
And my desire is to be a Jew.
It's fascinating to hear these survivors tie the physical state of Israel to the future of the Jewish people. I know that for us, we feel like a bridge between the past and the future.
Yeah.
We want our children to be aware of their heritage. We want them to know the importance of this growing movement of the Gentiles being grafted into the Commonwealth of Israel and together participating in the future that God has for us as believers.
Absolutely. You know, many people's perception of the modern state of Israel is not accurate. When we return, we will take you to the modern Jerusalem. Stay with us.
Our resource this week, the DVD series Bad Moon Rising. This 2-DVD set contains 8 half-hour programs hosted by Dr. Jeffrey Seif. The series chronicles the circumstances surrounding the Holocaust and likens them to events happening in our time. Witness the remarkable stand made by German churches against anti-Semitism. Contact us and ask for the DVD series Bad Moon Rising.
Hi, you know, a lot of things are going on in the world today, and especially in Israel, and this news needs to be told through this lens. That's what we do here at Zola Levitt Presents, and we're only able to do it because of your generous donations. And we just wanted to remind you, please keep giving as you are able, and we will keep doing what we do as well. Thank you so much.
For insightful perspectives on Israel and Bible prophecy, ask for our free monthly newsletter, The Levitt Letter. At levitt.com you can read the newsletter, watch the TV program, or visit our online store. Stay current with us on social media via Facebook and Twitter. Come with us on a tour of Israel or Petra, or a cruise to Greece and Ephesus. Please contact us for more information.
Miles and I would love to host you in Jerusalem and take you on a tour of the Holy Land. It is God's land, and He has a covenant plan, and it includes you. So let's go now and hear from Miles in Jerusalem.
We're coming to you from Kenyon Mamilla, the Mamilla Mall, the center of Jerusalem. And what you see, the shops and the growth economically, is evidence of the startup nation and the strength of the economy here in this tiny land. Bill Gates in 2008 said that Israeli innovation is critical for the future of all the tech businesses in the world. In other words, the ideas that are generated here are ideas that come to fruition through the beginning of manufacturing here, but then often are bought by larger businesses with greater capability. For example, your iPhone, your flip phone, your iPad, your Xbox, all have components in them that were developed here in Israel. Beyond that, we see developments like the traffic application, Waze, that everyone is using now all over the States, and it was developed here and then bought by Google for almost $1 billion. Not an unusual situation where programs, applications, ideas are generated here, and they have a booming effect on the economy here, and then are connected to the worldwide economy and the growth of the economy around the world. It's about this startup nation and the beauty of what gets developed here. Why? What is it about the Israeli people or the Israeli restoration that leads to this kind of growth and this kind of innovation? Well, what are some of the elements? There's chutzpah. The fact is that people here are willing to try. They're not going to give up. They're going to give it their best, and they're going to go for ideas, thinking there are no bad ideas. Something may develop into a very important innovation, so they're going to go for it. That's the chutzpah element. Also the element of family. The power of the family unit, the strength of the family here, the importance that people place on the family is significant, because it means that there's encouragement within the family unit to go for it, to try something different. There's that sense of service that comes because everyone has to serve in the military, which is another element. But there's also the willingness to fail. People will try until they succeed. They'll try and try and try until they succeed. And that willingness to fail and get up and start again is part of the innovation here in the startup nation. And again, I would say that also diversity, the fact that it's a land of immigrants, and the challenge that comes to people having to learn the language, come here into an unusual situation, start their lives over, having left whatever comfort or discomfort they've known in other nations, and to come here and start over is a real basic drive to see things innovative and to see new things happen. And finally, I would say that the element of the military and the service that people give to this country. You know, when employers are looking at the potential employee, they don't look at university, they don't look at educational background as often as they will ask, where did you serve? What did you do in the military? What was your role there? Because the businesses here and the innovators, they understand that the military puts young people in charge of millions of dollars of equipment, maybe huge numbers of personnel, great responsibility, and those skills can translate into success in the business world. And I'm grateful that now other nations are understanding this. We're hearing that nations are coming here to learn about how to marshal the strength of military servants and bring them into the business world. And that's coming from what goes on here in Israel. There's an understanding of that connection between service to the country and success in business. So if you put that all together, what we see is here in this startup nation, we have a clear idea that innovation, trying new things, and really being a part of the world engine of high tech is creating this kind of economic growth, economic diversity and strength, and it's coming to you from the tiny nation of Israel.
Here we are on Ben Yehuda Street. It is Purim, and as you can hear and feel the sounds behind us, people are celebrating. We are remembering this time of the victory of God's deliverance for the Jewish people. And you know, it even says at the end of the book of Esther, it talks about that there was so much joy and so much gladness knowing that God had delivered the people, that people were even converted to Judaism, Miles. And you can feel the joy, you can feel the happiness, you know, costumes and all.
Yeah, well, I noticed that you're dressed like Queen Esther.
Yes.
And there are many Esthers around here and lots of people dressed in the costumes telling the story of Purim, which is so important. When we speak about coming out of the ashes, we have to remember God is the one who delivered. He delivered us from the Holocaust, planted us in the land, but the story goes way back in history. It's the story of a promise, and the promise was to Abraham.
Yeah, you know, fortunately, you know, God always has a plan, even in the time of when the Jewish people were dispersed into Babylon, when they were under King Ahasuerus' rule. He had a deliverer planted there. It was the Mordecai, and he was in the king's courts, and he was able to hear the plots of the enemy, and he was able to send Queen Esther in, and he was able to encourage her to be that voice, just like God is calling us as Christians today to be the voice for Israel, to be that one that will take that stand and will be that one that will go before not only the King of Heaven, but will make the spheres of influences, take those spheres of influence and be the voice to stand up for the Jewish people today.
Yeah, we see the celebration going on here as people are some doing it religiously and recognizing it, some doing it just as an excuse and a chance to party. But the reality is we see the hand of God in the deliverance of the Jewish people and the restoration of this nation. What we see here is the economic growth. We see the increase, the incredible change that's taken place here as God has put the people back in the land and now is getting ready to be already begun to sprinkle clean water on the people as he's bringing spiritual deliverance as well.
You know, we're on the street called Ben Yehuda, and there was a very famous man who came to this land, and God gave him a dream, and he gave him a dream to see the restoration of the Hebrew language. And his dream, he couldn't get away from it. He even tried to go to another school and do more studies, but God reminded him when his health got ill that he had a dream, and that was the restoration of the Hebrew language. Yep. So this street behind us is named after him.
Yeah, and there's never been a time in history when a people have been restored after 2,000 years of dispersion, restored to the land, and had their ancient language restored as well. Only in Israel, only the Hebrew language. And Eliezer ben Yehuda is the man who did that. He's the one who said, we're going to speak Hebrew again. We're going to hear the voices of the children again in the streets. And that's what the prophet Zechariah said.
Yeah, he said there'd be old men walking with canes. He said there'd be young children playing. You are seeing prophecy fulfilled. You are not only seeing it, you're hearing it, and you're feeling it, and you're tasting it, because we bring you here to the land to partake of what God's plans are. They are alive, they are real, and it is happening today. So please take your stand. Take your stand for the people. Take your stand for the land, and be part of what God is doing in these end times.
Yeah, you know, part of what we're doing here is reminding you that you can not only be observing history, but you can be part of history as you take your stand with the Jewish people. Just as God said through Mordecai to Esther, who knows, but you've been brought into the kingdom for such a time as this. And we believe that if you're seeing this program, you've been brought into the kingdom for such a time as this to stand with the Jewish people, to know where you come from, and to know that God wants to use you as a blessing to the Jewish people and to Israel. And the word says God will bless those who bless the sons of Abraham. So we want to leave you with that word today. Catherine and I are honored to do this program because we have the opportunity of allowing you, helping you to understand that you can live out of that Genesis 12 promise, that if you bless the sons of Abraham, you bless the Jewish people in Israel, you will be blessed. And we've seen that over and over again as people knit themselves to the heart of God regarding the Jews. This story is amazing. I like the way Catherine says that it's modern and ancient at the same time. There's also this interim period at the end of the 19th century when this second aliyah, this aliyah of the coming back to Israel, was taken up by Herzl in Europe. Fascinating to me that the American author Herman Melville in 1857, he came to Israel and he saw what Mark Twain saw, just rocks and dirt. And he said, it's a pile of arid rocks upon which the emigrant Jews have taken up their abode as if in a skull. That's some powerful writing, and it describes the barrenness that was there, and yet this incredible event was to take place that we see now in modern Israel, with one of the most thriving economies in the world, the greatest agriculture in the world, and innovation coming that's blessing everyone. Some of the significant people that helped that happen, Moses Montefiore, a banker from Europe, he saw the condition of the Jewish people living in Israel at the time.
Poverty.
And he bought at inflated prices. Melville said that he was, the locals, the Turks and the Arabs, fleeced him sadly, but he paid at least 10 times the actual value of the land in order to reclaim some of the land for the Jewish people. It was not conquest, it was money, it was work, it was blood, sweat, and tears that led to this restoration. Baron Rothschild also was part of that restoration. And it's fascinating to me that two of the first products that took root and worked there were the creation of bread, because of Montefiore's windmill outside the walls of Jerusalem where they could process flour, and grapes because they could grow in sand, and Rothschild gave his best grapes from Chateau Lafite Rothschild in France in order to build the economy that was going to come from the wine as well. Bread and wine. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like Passover with Yeshua? Does that sound like Abraham and Melchizedek? Bread and wine. We see it again in Israel as God brings sustenance and joy.
Amen.
We always want to end our programs by reminding you, Shalom, Shalom, Yerushalayim.
Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Our monthly newsletter, The Levitt Letter, is free and full of insightful articles and news commentary from a messianic perspective. Visit levitt.com to find our newsletter, along with current and past programs, our television schedule, and much more.
Don't forget to order this week's resource by calling 1-800-WONDERS, or you can purchase it from our catalog at levitt.com.
Your donations to Zola Levitt Ministries help these organizations bless Israel. Please remember, Zola Levitt Ministries depends on tax-deductible donations from viewers like you.
This has been a paid program by Zola Levitt Ministries.